Edwina, let me kick off with you. You actually think that these second jobs are quite important in a way, don't you?
I mean, most MPs find that they are working full-time, and particularly when they first start being an MP and they're learning the job, they're getting to know the constituency, there really isn't much time for anything else, including the family very often. It's when they've settled in, they're experienced, they've got their systems organised, the office organised, they know the patch, and they often then find, especially if they aren't ministers, or they're not going to be ministers, or they've been ministers and they don't think they're going to be ministers again, they find opportunities then for deploying their talents in a way outside Parliament. And I think that's actually very useful. It means that we have a range of experiences, a range of talents, everybody from writers and journalists through to, people who help to run pension funds, who are on the boards of big international venture capital companies, people who actually are doing all sorts of things that Parliament is voting on, legislating on, people who are involved with family businesses as well. All of that it's grist to the mill. It actually makes Parliament, I think, work better. And if we didn't have that, Dan, we'd just have a load of policy wonks who didn't know anything about the outside world, nor the criticism that people make now would be even more true.
You say Edwina Currie is wrong, though, and actually there should be no outside work if you're an MP whatsoever.
Absolutely right. MPs are earning £82,000 a year. That's fine. They don't need any more. And also, if I think back to when I was an MP, so much of my time was spent dealing with the problems of my constituents. And if you're working for some giant corporation, you haven't got the time to do your job. And also, you end up doing what the corporation or giant company wants rather than what's in the interest of your local people.
But Ken, what about, OK, let me give you an example. What about a nurse or a doctor who is also an MP, but they like to keep their hours in so that they stay qualified, or a lawyer not doing the sort of Geoffrey Cox style work, but who maybe wants to help out on some cases that are good for the community? What about in those instances?
Well, if someone wants to spend a bit of time working as a nurse or a lawyer defending some person who's got a real problem or something like that, you can just about live with that. But to be employed by a corporation, earning over £100,000 a year, this is wrong.
I mean, Edwina, you must accept, Edwina, that this situation with Geoffrey Cox looks incredibly bad.
Yeah, hang on a minute. If I may, I mean, did that apply to Ken himself when he was an MP? I don't think so. He didn't actually declare the money that he was earning. He earned nearly £160,000 he didn't declare, and he was forced to apologise to the House of Commons. So, one more law for Ken and one law for everybody else, it looks like.
Ken, do you want to respond to that?
Actually, the only money I got as an MP was writing articles for newspapers or appearing on shows like this or something like that. I was never working for another corporation.
Yeah, but you and I were in the same speaking agencies, and you were getting £3,000, £4,000, £5,000, and you were not declaring it. You didn't want anybody to know about it. I mean, at least now we know about these amounts of money, and then the question arises as whether that's the right thing to do. But to hide it, that's a height of hypocrisy.
So that's a mic drop moment from Edwina Currie. She says you're being a big fat hypocrite, Ken Livingstone, over this.
No, not at all. Everything in in all that time I was in politics, everything was public. I didn't have any secrets. And I knew that because my phone was being bugged by MI5. There was no point having some secret life. And I didn't have, literally, I'm just living on my state pension. I didn't make millions of pounds while I was an active politician.
Edwina...
Brian Sedgemore, the Labour MP for Hackney South, who was a true lefty, said, and he's quoted in The Guardian saying, one thing for Livingstone to lie to all party members about his intentions to stand for mayor. Quite another for him to ask. Grannies and granddads are sending £5 postal orders out of their hard-earned savings, while at the same time he's got a secret stash of money on which he avoids paying income tax.
Well, look, Quite simply, my entire time in politics, I've been subject to lies and smears. I mean, the day I became the leader of the Greater London Council, Thatcher said my plan was to impose a communist tyranny on Britain. And after that, I mean, the media all went mad. I just came into politics to build more council housing, cut the bus and tube fares, I mean, make a better life for people. And that's what I think still
Okay.
a lot of
well,
it.
look, I want to bring this up to date. I want to bring this up to date and to the here and now. And Edwina Currie, one thing that I think has been very wrong in all of this is for Labour and the Lib Dems to try and describe this as a Tory scandal. Because I'm sorry, Edwina, they're in exactly the same boat. We know that Ed Davey himself receives tens of thousands of pounds outside of his work as an MP. And we saw in that clip Keir Starmer being forced to admit that he was negotiating with Mishcon de Reya as recently as 2017. So this isn't a Tory issue, is it? This is all MPs who do this.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely right, Dan. It's all MPs. And my own feeling is that as long as the stuff is declared and taxes are paid, as long as it's very clear what members are doing, then I can't quite see what the problem is. And I can see enormous value in allowing MPs to do exactly this. I mean, in any case, ministers are well aware. You know, if somebody is a sign of a big company, butchers, for example, I remember being lobbied by somebody whose family firm was butchery. And he knew what he was talking about. I listened carefully to what he said. I took on board what he was trying to explain. I thought that was a very, very useful piece of information. I'd rather have somebody explaining to me as a minister when they know what they're talking about than have some policy wonk who's got a piece of paper from some campaign team that, you know, in the end, it's not the way that is lobbying as well. Just because it says charity on it, sometimes it's still lobbying. To cut MPs off from the outside world, Dan, is a mistake. I can see why some people get very agitated about it, but it's very, very useful. My neighbour, Sir Ivan Lawrence, in the next door constituency when I was in South Derbyshire, was a criminal lawyer. I don't mean no, he was a lawyer that defended criminals. He went into the criminal court. And it was very, very useful at times. I could say to him, how does this work? Why does it work like that?
Because Ken Livingstone, isn't the risk... No, I understand your point, because Ken Livingstone, isn't the risk, if you ban all other forms of income, isn't the risk that you get a lot of teachers, you get a lot of, former teachers, former nurses, and that's great. But what you'll miss out on in Parliament is those top lawyers, those business people who bring something quite important to Westminster.
Well, just because they come from that background doesn't mean to say they're necessarily an effective MP. The simple fact is, I believe MPs should devote their entire time on that nice £82,000 salary a year to serving their local community and putting their time in.
I mean, Edwina, it's a lot of money, £80,000, and it's not just £80,000, is it? You know that. It's expenses. You get all of your travel paid for. You get an accommodation allowance. Edwina, don't you think most people are going to be sitting at home thinking, I'd happily take £80,000 to be an MP?
Well, then they should try. And the lists are open. In 2009, which was the last time we had a big noise about these sort of issues, and quite rightly too, during the dying days of the last Labour government, what David Cameron did was he opened the lists to candidates and he said, I want a lot more people with real life experience. And the outcome of that was we had an enormous intake of really quite remarkable members of Parliament, some of whom have been in government since. I think it is really it creates a balance. It means the House of Commons is a more accurate reflection of the outside world than just having elites from the trade union movement or from polytechnics and the like. But also, I mean, Ken and I have both been in exactly the same situation. We've done exactly the same things. We do journalism.
You've both done very well out of being MPs. It has to be said. Yeah. Reality
that can't be seen
shows.
as, it doesn't detract from your work as an MP. In the end, each MP does their work in their own way. Not everybody represents a poor inner
Okay.
city seat. Many areas
No,
are much more
I hear
prosperous
your
than that.
point, and it was a fascinating debate. That was former Conservative Minister Edwina Currie and ex-Labour Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone. Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.